Welcome back to the Vikings Collective. I'm Alec Lewis with Matthew Coller and Garret Greenlee. We are going to talk today about the latest on the Vikings quarterback situation, Jordan Addison's contract, and much more. Thank you guys for being here. It's going to be a fun show. All right, it's an off day at Vikings training camp in Eagan, Minnesota. So quiet time out in Eagan at the TCO Performance Center. We're like, why not do the Vikings Collective, on this off day? I hope you guys are well. I can't wait to have this conversation. We had a blast last week debuting this thing. We're going to have a lot of fun today. And we're going to start with a really surprising topic here in Minnesota Vikings land, and that would be with Kyler Murray, J.J. McCarthy, and how these guys have looked and how it's looked to follow it from a reporting standpoint. Garret, that's where we will begin. I am just curious where your emotions are at, Garret, 7 practices in with what you've read, what you've seen, what you've heard. Take it from there. Let me have it. I want to hear it all.
Yeah, so I entered the training camp entered August hoping that it would be much more close. But right now, from everything I've read, from the clips I've seen, it very much appears Kyler Murray is way out in front of JJ in terms of the winning the quarterback job. And that was the point that that I kind of made last week, where if Kyler Murray is this good of a player, it's not going to be that much of a competition for everybody that was so gung-ho on Kyler is levels and tiers above JJ. And credit to the people that have been on the Kyler Murray train from the start. I am a little frustrated with what I've seen, what I've read from JJ so far throughout camp. The anticipatory throwing is one part that, quite frankly, entering year 3, I'm disappointed with JJ, and considering we drafted him with the 10th overall pick, no excuses. He has to be better in that regard, and unfortunately has been so far. So credit to everybody that was on the Kyler Murray train entering August, and that's where we are right now.
Yeah, I want to, Collar, stick with J.J. McCarthy. I mean, we'll talk about Kyler Murray and just, how it's looked, how we think it'll progress. But I'll just, get your thoughts, Collar, to what my opinion has been. It's like, I just don't know with J.J. McCarthy if I've seen much, if any, real transformation in what I've seen on the practice fields. Like, there is no question, in my opinion, Collar, watching every throw thus far, that when it is an open look and there needs to be a high velocity throw in the red zone on the body, like, he can make that happen. But it feels like every time or most instances where he has to apply touch on the football to get the ball up and down the field, or whether he has to, as Garret just mentioned, anticipate windows or receivers out of breaks, it's just felt like a tick slow. As he's going through progressions, it's just hitch, and it feels like there's gotta be a decisive decision. Now, I've tried to give grace in the sense that when he is working with the backups and the number 2s, how much are these receivers open against Brian Flores' defense, which has looked good. But in the end, I think unless the ball is just uncorked at some point, and until this doesn't maintain and continue to be a theme, it's just been on my mind. How do you feel about that, Collar?
Well, you didn't ask me about my emotions. I think I'm looking at Garret thinking that his ice cream cone just fell on the ground with the disappointment from having J.J. McCarthy struggle so far. I think at this moment, I would probably say I'm sort of resigned to the fact of where things are, that if through 7 practices we don't see anything that would indicate that this quarterback has taken a step forward. And we've had some very high intensity practices at this point, 2 of them with pads. And I would also say that last Saturday was a very intense and long practice. And when you're just not seeing consistency of accuracy, even when we're watching one-on-one drills or red zone drills or warm-ups, the accuracy is just still struggling to be on point consistently. And I know our buddy Kevin Seifert's tweet blew up about, three straight, I think it was on air, and three straight balls just went flying into the fescue that's behind the goal line. And, it just has made me think a lot about whether accuracy is something that can be fixed. I think it can definitely be improved, but can it actually be greatly improved to the point where JJ McCarthy can be a starting quarterback in the league? And when we look through history, there are a lot of first-round quarterbacks who have all the tools, and I think that McCarthy does. I think that when I read in The Athletic and the quarterback tiers that he's not a big guy, I'm like, you haven't stood next to him. I think he's a pretty big guy, and he's definitely got a big arm, and he's definitely got great athleticism. And I think that when he's confident, you can see him playing that way. And we've seen that in spurts throughout different training camps, 2024, the end of 2025. But I haven't seen much of the confidence there from him. And I wonder about how much plays into it the fact that the reps have leaned pretty strongly toward Kyler Murray, the totality of them. Murray's starting to run away with those first team reps, and you can sort of start to feel it slipping through your fingers. And there have been times where I've seen receivers down the field. I mean, we've seen enough of these Kevin O'Connell practices. We know where the ball is supposed to go, and you're going, okay, and now you throw, okay, and now you checked it down to Josh Oliver for 3 yards. There's been a lot of that, and I've been counting up like downfield throws and underneath throws. And in yesterday's practice, I think I had like 17 underneath throws or something from JJ McCarthy. So I feel like it's one of those things where it's a lot of stuff that's weighing on him and coming together that is making this pretty difficult. And I think that it is one of those, you're going to kind of prove whether you're going to go one way or the other from this. Like, this is a really tough spot. This is a lot of adversity to be in. So the rest of camp will maybe tell us a lot about whether JJ pulls himself out of this or whether this is kind of who he is right now.
I think the point you made about the underneath throws, like in Wednesday's press, so much tape, and I know you've watched so much JJ tape. And so I would wonder, like, does this stuff surprise you? Or if you think about watching the Michigan tape, like, is some of it, like, I can understand what we're seeing now?
So I think it's commonly started 10 games, but buddy, we're in year 3. I mean, we brought in Kyler Murray for a reason. Your job is, I mean, everybody in the world knows it's on the line. There's also a very real scenario where that JJ could be QB3, so that there's not even a point of discussion in the season opener against Green Bay. So all of this is to say that I do worry about, everything, just because we haven't seen it on a consistent level. And rather than, kind of like the Anthony Rich.
He looks like a guy who was prepared to come run Kevin O'Connell's offense. I think that he is going through progressions quickly. I think that he's reading things the right way. He only threw 3 deep shots, but he completed all 3 of them. And those 2 passes, I remember when we saw the first OTA pass that he threw deep to Jordan Addison, and I said it was almost like it was delivered with dove wing or 2 doves, like floating the ball down, because it just has such touch on it. And, it dropped into the perfect area. So it was like if Addison just went and stood there, it just rested into his hands, which was the same way with both of those with Felton and Jennings, where they could run right underneath it. They get behind the safeties. It drops right in there. But I also thought that the most important throw was the one that half of the internet, and you know which half, was saying that was an underthrown ball. It was an underthrown ball. But you know who doesn't care if it was slightly underthrown? Number 18, who loved going up and getting it. We saw that at the end of practice. The Vikings tweeted out. Also noticeable that the Vikings started tweeting out stuff that Kyler was doing. Conspiracies. But as if the first team reps didn't tell us everything. But like, he throws the ball up to Justin Jefferson. There's some coverage over there, but Jefferson just goes up and straight up mosses Isaiah Rodgers like he would 95% of corners in the NFL. And I felt last year that the quarterback did not give Justin Jefferson a chance, because what we know from Kirk Cousins, what we know from Sam Darnold, what we even saw, you remember Carson Wentz did this in the Cleveland game. He just threw it up to Jefferson, put it high, let him go get it. And guess who came down with it? Number 18. That 4th and whatever it was, 4th and 18 in 2022, when it's like, what's our play for 4th and 18? Just throw it up for number 18 and go get it. I think that one right there, as he walks off the field catching that football, nobody feels better about where Kyler Murray is at right now than Jefferson. And I feel like they've had great connection early on. This is only 7 practices in. Normally, even Kirk or Sam Darnold would not look super, super, super sharp, as if they're having like unbelievable practices. But you can see the things that Kevin O'Connell wants to do are getting done by Kyler Murray, like he is an NFL starting quarterback who's thrown 3,000 passes. So, this thing was probably never that mysterious. And from my perspective, I thought this was a great idea all along. Design Kyler Murray. I thought he would be a fit. I thought that there's a lot of stuff that's more myth than truth about Kyler Murray and his time in Arizona, because I don't think anyone watched the Arizona Cardinals in the last 3 seasons. And so what I'm seeing is just like, yeah, I expected this to be pretty good, darn good with Justin Jefferson, and I still expect it to continue to be good after seeing this.
This is one of these early points in the Vikings Collective show where I feel like I just get to play point guard back and forth, and I'm just very excited for it. You mentioned the throw over the top of Isaiah Rodgers and Theo Jackson to Justin Jefferson. It was scored a touchdown in the 2-minute drill Wednesday. It obviously was on social media. And as you said, Coller, many people had different thoughts. Garret, I'm curious, as you saw that, what was going through your mind as you reflected on what was said?
No, I mean, my biggest thing that I do and emphasize is, as Coller and I, we differed on the JJ Kyler thing. The biggest thing that I want to emphasize is I obviously want the team to do well. So I don't care who wins. Like, it's just, if we win games, great. And my biggest thing was, it was good to see, Justin Jefferson make plays. It was good to see him, after a year from hell where it was just everything that could have gone wrong last year. It's finally good to see that energy back, because we are at times just kind of, we just kind of forget how good we have it with Justin Jefferson, where we don't have to have the diva conversations and everything else. And it was good to see him make plays and to be the guy that we saw in the first 5 years of his career. And to go back to the 4th and 18 from Buffalo, just throw it up, 18's down there somewhere. Incredible. I can't wait to see more of that in 2026, which it very much looks like we're going to see heading into the year.
Yeah, I think the best point, Garret, you just mentioned is like you can feel the energy of Justin. And I feel like all camp. Now, last year he had the hamstring, so he wasn't on the field to really feel that energy, But Coller, like I will say, reflecting on what we've seen through 7 practices, like you do feel like his presence, his electricity, I think the motivation level with Justin Jefferson, it's not surprising. He has never minced words about the importance of the offense looking good, the offense looking crisp, the team winning. Like, this stuff really, really matters to this guy at a high level. And so there is probably, this is assuming, and he hasn't said it this explicitly, but probably a vibrant.
Or I thought, give this guy 2 real receivers. He's actually got 3 real receivers. I think Juwan Jennings is wide receiver 1 in Arizona. And none of the social media clips that I've seen of practice there in Arizona have changed my mind about that. If you saw the viral video going around about Marvin Harrison just dropping easy passes in camp. I really think that Murray is a much more talented pocket quarterback than people think he is, because his early reputation was drop back, scramble all over the place, make some crazy ass play. But that really was not who he was with Drew Petzing over the last couple of years. And I think that what we've seen is very few plays where he has scrambled around, maybe 1 or 2. And there was one scramble he took off on a 3rd down in the situational drill that just shows you that he's capable of doing that and his speed is there. But he has played within the pocket through this entire camp. But I don't think that anything is more important to Kevin O'Connell in this offense than the connection to Justin Jefferson. We know that there's a bigger picture conversation with Jefferson that's looming. That's just sort of the reality of the NFL and athletes at his level in 2026. But when you see, even in a warm-up play where they're doing one-on-ones, receiver versus corner, which are always unfair to the corners, but he dropped one in the bucket.
That's my least favorite drill.
Yeah,
not to cut you off.
Yeah.
Because it's just not fair. It's just not. It's like one-on-one in basketball. It's not. It doesn't simulate it.
5 seconds sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's yeah. But he dropped one in the bucket to Jefferson that was probably 25 yards down the field, and it was just like, every time Jefferson catches one of those balls from Kyler, you see what you're talking about, like that energy from Justin Jefferson. And that is the driver of the offense. And I always thought it would be the canary in the coal mine to whether this offense could possibly work. So if you were going to tell me that Kyler Murray could get Justin Jefferson a season like DeAndre Hopkins had back when those two were together, and he's going to catch 100 balls for 1,500 yards, well, then it does have quite a high ceiling on the offense. I don't think it's as high as, the Detroit Lions or, the Dallas Cowboys are some of the best quarterbacks and some of the best in the NFL. But I do think that the area where Sam Darnold was, the area where Kirk was, when Sam Darnold got here, we thought he was one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. And with Kirk Cousins, if you look at Sando's quarterback tiers, he always ranked around the same area that Kyler Murray did. So can you get Kirk Cousins level production with a great team and a great defensive coordinator around him and the best kicker in the world and have a chance to win the division? I wouldn't say that I watched 7 practices and decided this was the greatest show on turf, but I do think it looks about the best case scenario for how it could have looked through this point.
There was a moment in Wednesday's practice where, to your point, Kyler kind of got flushed from the pocket. It wouldn't have been a sack, and he kind of, sprinted 15 yards down the field. And I turned probably to you or other people standing next to me in the tent, and I'm like, the explosiveness is still very much real with him. And I think, it gets me to the conversation. I still think durability is going to be, the overwhelming topic as this thing progresses. But Garret, just to kind of end it with the quarterbacks, like, does what you've seen, what you've heard, does it give you, confidence or belief that NFC North title is possible? Or like, where is your mind from a expectation standpoint?
Yeah, I think NFC North champions in 2026 is very realistic, because one of the biggest things that I will continue to just, beat the drum till the season starts is our quarterbacks last year threw more interceptions than touchdowns. And even if you don't like Kyler Murray, do you think that he's going to throw, 19 interceptions to 13 passing touchdowns this year? Even if you don't like him, I think the answer is still a definitive no. So if we were that bad offensively last year, bottom 6 in a lot of categories, and, Justin Jefferson barely cleared 1,000 yards, yes, I think we can win the NFC North this year, especially when the quarterback play, at least to me, should go nowhere but up. And my biggest concern with Kyler was in that, that vertical passing attack with O'Connell and taking the hits that we mentioned, where O'Connell's quarterbacks do take a lot of hits. That was my concern with Kyler, given when he's under pressure, the play can be erratic. But with everything we've seen so far, it's oddly for this, we know as a fan base and people that have covered the Vikings, it oddly looks good right now in August.
And Coller, this because we stand next to each other, but like, there is a lot of creativity going on. There's a lot of creativity with formations, with motions. There's quick game dispersed in. There's some like concepts with carryover to what Kyler Murray succeeded in Arizona. A lot of the vertical hits are on these high crossers, which he can kind of see it out deep down the field. So like, I think the more this goes, the more refined what their plan is, like publicly, what their plan is going to be, the more the conversation then turns to how do they gel and adapt, and how does the creativity that we're already seeing meld with that? And I think that's where the next phase of excitement goes for me.
And I also think that when you're talking about those motions and the formations and everything else, that's a lot of Kyler answering questions about how prepared he was going to be for this camp, and taking what he learned in OTAs and the install and bringing it to camp, because I haven't seen too many plays where he's had to, oh, it's a sack, or, oh, I didn't know where that thing was going, or have a conversation with Kevin O'Connell after the play or anything else like that. So I think that he's done a really good job of getting them going. And then I don't think that any team, we can really say at this point in the year, what is their actual ceiling? What could they actually be? Because we have no idea who's going to get hurt, how things are going to play out. People have decided that the Lions have an easy schedule. Do they really? I don't know. I think that's probably right, but like so many things change throughout a season. But I think that this would be, to this point, probably the best case scenario from what you've seen from Kyler Murray. And I also think that it's probably time for Kevin O'Connell to just shift even further toward him getting more of the work and do what we expected to do as we go into the next phase of training camp. But I do tend to think that with this offense, and if they can improve the running game, which they've talked about a lot, I haven't seen it yet in the couple of padded practices. It's not like it's Adrian Peterson running out there, but I think that it does have a ceiling that's probably similar to what we saw from someone like Sam Darnold.
Prize Picks had the over-under at us talking quarterbacks at 23. So we actually, for those who were on that's what, you got that one. I want to segue to what for me, I think is going to be, I mean, I'm just speaking selfishly, the most fun conversation of this show, and that's the rookies. And we could go all over the map with this because there are a lot of them who have stood out. Garret, I would just say, monitoring things, who of all of them are you most intrigued by and why?
I absolutely can't wait to see Charles Demings play in the regular season, because it's fun to root for a corner that your organization drafted and see the growth of that player throughout, and to see tweets that Justin Jefferson is looking for flags because Charles Demings is covering him. I mean, we're talking about one of the best receivers in the NFL against a day 3 rookie corner, and he's not mossing him the way and winning and routing him up the way he does other corners and has for over half a decade now. So for Charles Demings to look the way he has in camp, and I know James Pierre at times wasn't out there, but we could be looking at a scenario where we kind of have like a Lou Gehrig, Wally Pipp with Charles Demings before James Pierre would even have the opportunity to take the field as a starting corner. So Charles Demings, I'm irrationally excited about and just buying into the idea of a corner that we can, tie ourselves to, rather than bringing in these guys that play for 1 year and that we've done for really the past 2 or 3 years.
I think I'm going to have to, to have Chuck Demings, Lou Gehrig, and Wally Pipp in the same sentence is something that I don't know in my life if I would have ever envisioned something like that. Coller, do you feel like the Charles Demings hype is warranted?
I do, and the reason for that is, well, when we think of a day 3 pick, we often think of someone who is kind of a try-hard, who has maybe maximized every bit of their talent and squeezed out every bit of juice out of the orange or something. But because he went to Stephen F. Austin, you might not realize that he was one of the best athletes in the NFL Combine. And then he told us after he was drafted that he was dealing with knee soreness that day and didn't even jump as high as he possibly could. And we see the explosiveness with this guy and the speed and the quickness, and he has the arm length, he has the size. So there isn't one specific thing that's kept him away from this. It's kind of his story and his background of staying at Stephen F. Austin that kept him under the radar. And as you guys saw, teams didn't draft D2 guys. They didn't draft FCS guys this year. They didn't even draft MAC players, basically. It was the assumption that every player who was any good would have moved to a bigger school. I have to imagine that if Charles Demings had transferred to Oregon and played the entire season and gotten 2 or 3 interceptions, that he would have been a higher draft pick. And I also think the guy, like when you just see the way people light up when you ask them about Charles Demings, I mean, we saw it from Byron Murphy at the podium. Brian Flores is always very, very slow to praise rookies because he's seen them all. He's been around. Yeah, he's grizzled. But he even was saying that he takes the things that they're working on in the individual drills and transfers them over to team drills, which is like a huge coach compliment. So I think it's all matching up. I mean, that doesn't mean he's going to start. Like, they've got 2 starting corners and Pierre is a veteran player. But I think what it says is this is the first promising corner that they've drafted in a very, very long time. And, I think that it may change their future plans potentially. And also, even I know people can say it's just camp anyway. We just don't see this. We just don't see a 5th rounder at almost any position just come in and start going up against the ones and looking like he's a veteran player. If you didn't know anybody on the roster, you would think that he was one of the better players on the team so far. So I think that the hype is warranted.
The biggest thing, and you just mentioned it with, the vertical jump, from an explosiveness and an athleticism standpoint, for a Stephen F. Austin guy, like, he does not look out of place at all whatsoever. And as you were talking there, I was just going back in my mind of thinking, like, okay, who are the cornerbacks that we've seen them draft since I've covered the team in 2020, since 2022? And Andrew Booth Jr., like, you know, just to compare the two, Chuck Jennings' ability to play the football is leaps and bounds beyond that. You think about Mekhi Blackman, the physicality that Chuck Jennings plays with and the ability to play the ball has stood out through 7 practices in the spring more than I can ever remember with Mekhi Blackman, a guy I really did like at times watching, you know, in some of these practices. So, and then the part about the attitude and the personality, you know this, Collar, and Garrett, you do too. Like, this is a team. It is the NFL, and it is a big business, but you need connectors internally to create a chemistry. I thought the Vikings defense that 2 years ago in 2024 celebrated as much as they did after interceptions, after forced fumbles. Like, that stuff is silly. It's goofy. It grabs attention, but I do think it can produce like a feeling and a vibe that almost leads you to make more plays. And so I mean, everything about this guy, I asked you the question, Collar, about the hype, because I don't believe it is at all. If you ask me every day who's a guy who stands out, he's on my list every single day. And I introduced myself to him yesterday, and at the end he says, keep being a gift to the world. And I'm like, that's not how I try to be that way, but he just has this like effect on people. So it's been really fun. I'll kick it back to you, Collar. Of the other rookies, who else has like your mind gravitated to?
Yeah, I mean, I think so I want to say Max Bredesen because they're clearly using him a lot, and he looks the part, man. I mean, he really does. So how much they're going to use big personnel is an actual question. This team bringing in Bredesen, and this is no disrespect to CJ Ham, who's an awesome fullback, but Bredesen is, I think, a little bigger than CJ Ham, and he is a young player. I think that the physicality that they want to play with Juwan Jennings, Bredesen is a big part of this, because you don't know when they draft the fullback, you kind of assume, but you don't know if he's actually going to get out there right away. And then the Josh Oliver part of it as well. I mean, I think they want to be able to win a lot of different kind of ways, a lot of different types of games. If Kyler Murray doesn't have it that day, or they have to play Carson Wentz or JJ, like, you got to be able to win by running 30 times. And maybe last year KOC got convinced that is possible to do. So that stood out to me, just how much he's been out on the field. And I think the other is that Dominique Orange, now I know he was a little bit banged up, but has not gotten in there much so far. And Caleb Banks is really just ramping up. So the two guys that we kind of expected to be a big part of this right away through 7 practices haven't really been much. And I'm going to be watching very closely on that, and not to cover every single guy, but the fact that Jake Golday is getting first team reps inside and outside is really huge for him. It's a hard role to play, linebacker for Brian Flores, and it says a lot about how prepared he was to come into this camp.
Garrett, I want to kick it to you, but first, before we do that, I do want to talk about Prize Picks. We're looking here at a lineup of receivers. And it is for week 1, Collar, against the Green Bay Packers. I mean, when is week 1? Are we like a month away? I mean, it's unbelievable.
We are, but you can still do it now.
All right. Yeah. I mean, and that's why we're showing it to the viewer right now. Justin Jefferson's yards on Prize Picks for week 1, 76.5. Christian Watson's 54.5. Tucker Kraft, he's back. That's critical for them if he is back, indeed. 52.5 receiving yards. Collar, what do you think about Justin there? 76.5 week 1 against the Packers. I doubt they're going to cover him like what was the defensive coordinator? Joe Barry. What was his name years ago? 2022 week 1 at US Bank Stadium. They didn't double cover Justin. It was just like open zones everywhere, and he had, I believe, 150 yards that day. But 76.5 feels like an interesting number. Where are you guys at on that?
Well, I think that just in general, Kevin O'Connell in week 1s has come out with some very interesting stuff, and he's been cooking up things all summer long to get Justin Jefferson open, and we've often seen that come to fruition. And I also think that Kyler Murray has pumped the football to his number 1 wide receivers throughout his career. So I would be more on the side of Justin Jefferson having a big day to start the season.
Garrett, what do you think about the Packers receiving core?
I think the Packers receiving core is in a position where you never know who to lean on for that specific week. And I feel like it's very much, if you pick one more then it'll be less than, because they choose to go with the opposite for that game. With Kraft specifically, I feel like with him coming off the ACL, I would imagine they'd want to ease him in. That would be kind of where I'd lean on that one. I feel like, because he tore his ACL nearly midway through the year last year, so I think they're gonna ease him into the offense.
The name I'm not seeing there, and I'm just gonna have to go on the Prize Picks app later and look at it, is Jaden Reed. I've always loved that guy. I always think he's really dynamic. So I would just be curious where the number is. But if you are a new user of Prize Picks, you can play for $5, get 150 if you win. That seems like a pretty good deal. But yeah, you can go check out what's expected for week 1 between the Vikings and the Packers. Garrett, I do want to kick it back to you on the rookies. Coller mentioned Max Bredesen. Coller mentioned Jake Golday. We touched a little bit on the interior defensive linemen. Of those names, is there any one of them for you that you have your eyes on more than the others?
Definitely Max Bredesen, and I did see a clip somebody posted yesterday at the end of practice of Bredesen and CJ Ham together. CJ had his arm around him after practice. That was really cool to see. And I do think, the NFL is a copycat league. That's kind of a fact. That's not me thinking it. That's just more of a fact. But we saw the rise of, heavier personnel packages last year. I was in an interview recently with somebody else, and they basically said that it's a good point that the NFC North now is kind of like how the AFC North used to be with the Ravens and Steelers, just with how much of a slugfest it is, with how, every team in our division is, there's beef everywhere along the trenches. So to bring in Bredesen and to use more heavier packages, and to think that, we're going to play 21 games this year. At least that's the goal here in August. I can't wait to see the utilization of Max Bredesen as a rookie, how many snaps he's getting per game when we are using him, if he's going to be strictly used as a blocking fullback, if he's going to have a couple of, routes per game, kind of just out to the flat just to get the ball in his hands. That's a player I can't wait to see in 2026.
If the Vikings are playing 21 games by week 21, I'm going to be asleep on the Vikings Collective show, given the fatigue. But it's just how it goes. And somehow Coller won't, even though he'll be live streaming for 9 hours on that night. Max Bredesen, I'm glad you guys. I didn't know if you'd go fullback central here, but more than anything, I'm as impressed that he doesn't look lost at all with the offense and all of the jobs that are required of that spot. And we heard coaches rave about CJ Ham in Kevin O'Connell's time here for a reason. It's because he knew every component of an offense that is not easy to know. And given that they are incorporating more motions, perhaps with Max Bredesen, a guy who is in a mold of Alec Ingold, who was in Miami with Frank Smith, who is now the Vikings assistant head coach, in the event that they could be used in a similar way. In the event, it's pretty impressive that Max Bredesen would be able to already have the mental aptitude and wherewithal to know how to kind of live in some of those worlds, Coller. And I'd imagine you'd agree with that.
No, I do agree. And I just think that it probably shows you how versatile they want to be as an offense. Even Wes Phillips was talking about yesterday the pistol formation, which I'm sure was not designed for Kyler Murray at all when they thought it up to put it in the offense this year, and the fact that they signed him. But no, it's really when we've seen, I guess the only question is, can this team, because it's great to have a lot of different stuff, can they have something that is clearly their fastball? And if their fastball is pounding the heck out of Jordan Mason with Josh Oliver and Juwan Jennings, imagine a package where you just have Hawkinson, or maybe Ben Yurosek makes the team, and you just have 2 big tight ends, a fullback, and Juwan Jennings is the only wide receiver. Are you willing to do that 5 times in a row if you're winning that way? And so far, Kevin O'Connell has not really wanted to do that, but I think that they have the personnel to do it. I also think they have more of the offensive line health to do it at this moment. And, the offensive line getting a first-round draft pick who's developing, Darisaw back to 100%. It was really great to see. Jordan Mason ran off the left side and went into the end zone, and Darisaw and Donovan Jackson are celebrating. It's like Darisaw looking like himself again has also been a huge deal to what they could be as a running offense.
And I think, like, you don't have to live that way maybe forever, but if you live that way for a certain amount of time and it forces the opposing defense to adapt the way they are trying to defend your pass concepts, then you're marrying the run and pass the way that Kevin O'Connell, I think, the way he learned and adapted throughout his time in Los Angeles. Like, I think that's so much of it. It's like, are you willing to play a certain style to force the defense to commit to stopping that style so that you can then play other styles? And I think that push-pull is going to be a critical conversation, with this specific season. We talked about the tweets at the end of the show. We're gonna do that. But Coller put us on this last week. We're gonna give a specific take about something. He wants to put me in the most uncomfortable position possible, Garrett. He also wants to hear an opinion from you. And I personally want to hear his opinion because this is what he does. He gives opinions. So let's do something real quick, whether it's edge rusher depth, Garrett, whether it's run game intrigue, whether it's related to Jordan Addison's future contract. Do you have an opinion with this team that you're just like raring to get off your chest?
I 1000% do, and it goes back to immediately what Coller just said. And what has drove me crazy at times over the past couple of years is watching this team play, and we are the ones getting bullied rather than the bullies. And with the idea of Max Bredesen in the game, with the idea of Josh Oliver, and with the idea of Jordan Addison on the sidelines, because we have Jawan Jennings in the game, because Jawan Jennings he's rocked up. He is a built receiver. I love the idea of having all of the big bodies in, Jordan Mason behind Bredesen, and basically saying, stop us. And I think back to the Eagles game back in 2020, I think it was 2022 or 23 was one of them. We got killed both years there. But the game that DeAndre Swift had 175 yards, where every time it's 6 yards. I mean, they're 2nd and 4 before DeAndre Swift is even getting touched. And it's one of those games where you just sit back as a fan. To me, those are the most infuriating games when you sit there, you can't stop the run. They're going to continue to call run plays. And finally, we are, a big enough team to be able to do this with all of the guys. So with the run game intrigue, that is one thing I really hope we see this year. O'Connell has shied away from, trying to run the ball consistently in the past. And there's been times where he's just weirdly timed straight away from the run. That's one thing I really hope we see this year, where I want to see us be the bullies in the run game rather than the ones getting bullied.
Coller, you got some. First of all, what do you think of that? Because I would say, for me, I've talked a lot about the run game, written about the run game a lot, and it's always funny because when you talk to players about it, or coaches or executives, like, they are very forward in saying, when you can run the football and you can control the game that way, like, it just changes everything. And so, like, I juxtapose that often with the advanced metrics and how, run game metrics tend to be less than pass game. But I also think it's all tied together. And so the better you can run the football, most likely the more advantageous you can then situations for you to then throw the football. So I like the opinion I've put out on social media and written about the short yardage runs and 3rd and 1 and the struggles in that area. But what are your thoughts on that? And then give us an opinion, because that's what you do.
Well, maybe it's too easy to just use the team that won the Super Bowl as a good example of this, but you think about the Seattle Seahawks last 2 games. Against the Rams, they had to win a shootout. And Sam Darnold had to be the guy and outperform Matthew Stafford that night, or they were not going to the Super Bowl, and they were able to do that. And then in the Super Bowl, Clint Kubiak, who was calling the plays, I'm sure at some point pretty early on realized, they're not scoring any points on us in this Super Bowl. So we need to run the football. We need to control it. We need to punt well, which they did, because, if we pin them back inside the 10, are they going to score? Like, no, not against our defense, not on this day. So he was willing to, at times, run on 1st and 2nd down, be safe on third down, didn't lean too much into the passing game because that was the potential for a turnover. And then, of course, as the game went along, you do wear down the defense, but you have to be able to do both. And even we saw this from the Philadelphia Eagles in 2024. They won the NFC Championship on handing off a bunch of times to Saquon Barkley, but really their offense in the Super Bowl got shut down with the run game and they passed the ball with Jalen Hurts. You have to be able to do everything. I mean, sometimes football this way, we're always looking for the model of, well, how do you really win? And the answer is, oh, I'd just be good at a lot of stuff all the time. So I do think that they've given themselves that tool in the bag more now than at any other point during Kevin O'Connell's tenure. I'll give you a quick take and let you guys react to it, which is just that if you're Jordan Addison and you saw Zay Flowers get 4 years, $140 million, is that right? Somewhere in that ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
I would be getting a chauffeur and I would be tucking in at 9:30 at night PM and I would be doing everything I possibly can, which, you know, we saw Addison working out with Kyler Murray going into the season and so forth, just doing everything I can because I think the way Kevin O'Connell talks about this guy, they want him long-term. It will be a challenge with the dollar figures, but you know this in the NFL, if you want something to happen, you can make it happen. And I think that Addison should be very inspired by a guy from his draft class getting those dollars and seeing what's out potentially in front of him. So reaction.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this, Collar, when I saw that number, it was a wow. I mean, I will be curious, and I'll get you both of your thoughts on like how you think about just Jordan Addison compared to Zay Flowers as players, just strictly on the field, because I think that's an interesting conversation. But I just looked this up while you were talking. I mean, the Vikings right now for 2026 are spending $171 million on their offense. That is seventh most in the NFL. Jordan Addison obviously would cost a premium. And so that, you know, raises the bar even further. I think for 2027, the Vikings are planned to spend $185 million. So it would, Collar, to your point, take a lot of creativity, but when on the field, they have had Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and their guys healthy, and they have had quarterback play that rises to a requisite level. They can really get explosive in the passing game, and that's what they wanted their identity to be. So it's going to be quite interesting to me, factoring in the off-field stuff and all of it, what a fair number ultimately becomes for him, Garrett, don't you think?
Yeah, so with the Jordan Addison contract specifically, I think from a franchise standpoint, at least right now, the Vikings are in a favorable spot just because he's coming off of a, you know, career low with everything. He didn't have a good year last year, but there is also a part to this where Jordan Addison goes for 1,000 yards for the first time this year. The quarterback play is significantly improved from last year, which we all expect, and he has double-digit touchdowns for the second time in his career. And then the part that I'm not going to look forward to is whenever these contract discussions talk, because of the rising salary cap every year, is with Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison. I don't think there's that much of a difference between the two. I don't think that just because Zay has outproduced Jordan, I mean, you have to look at who's on the opposite side of the field of Jordan Addison and obviously realize that his numbers are always going to be limited, at least compared to what Zay has been able to accomplish statistics-wise. But then we're going to have a conversation of, if Zay got the exact contract in terms of average annual value of Justin Jefferson, you know, agents always, they're looking for their slice of the pie. There's a non-zero chance that we have a conversation next offseason of Jordan Addison getting paid more than Justin Jefferson, which is it could very easily happen, but that's one thing that I want to be clear. I think Jordan Addison bounces back in a big way this year because even though we have him under contract for 2027, he knows, the Vikings know, everybody knows if he balls out this year that we're looking at a 9-figure contract for Jordan Addison, and that would be inevitable.
Collar, I mean, from a player comparison standpoint, I know you probably haven't ripped a bunch of Zay Flowers tape of late, but I like, how do you, for me, I don't see a ton of difference between these two. Like Zay maybe has more like short area explosiveness, but I mean, Jordan Addison's smoothness as a route runner might be more polished. So what is your opinion of those two compared to each other?
Yeah, and Flowers has been much more of a wide receiver one in role, which we don't know exactly how Addison would perform had he had that role in 2023 and 2024. But I do think that Addison is one of the best in the league at going downfield, going up and getting it, ball tracking, creating separation one-on-one. There are sometimes some issues of working through physicality, which I think he's got better at. And with Flowers, I see him as having that jolt, having that lightning, like get the ball in his hands and he can make a lot of plays. But in terms of where you would rank them, if you were ranking all wide receivers in the NFL, I don't think that it would be that different. It's clearly not up there with, Nakua, Jefferson, Chase, JSN. Like he's not there, but he is probably in the second tier of wide receivers when he's at his best. Last year, he was like a fourth tier wide receiver, and we can't completely blame the quarterback play on that either, because he dropped a lot of passes last season and it didn't seem like the focus was really there. So I think this is a turning point for Jordan Addison in his career. And, there does also become maybe an angle of trading him if he has a very good season. I don't think it's something that Kevin O'Connell wants to do, but we also saw the Seattle Seahawks trade away DK Metcalf and lean into JSN because they were going to have to pay DK Metcalf a heck of a lot of money, and they didn't want to do that, so they let the Pittsburgh Steelers pay him instead. So you might get to that crossroads just because, as Garrett mentioned, when you have the idea of these prices where Zay Flowers is creeping up on Justin Jefferson, Jefferson's going to need a new contract after this season. So that has to, I think, be factored into the Addison discussion as well.
I mean, it's also, you just can't pay everybody top dollar all the time. If you're paying Christian Darrisaw, and I don't even know, Christian Darrisaw's guaranteed money at some point is probably going to, it's going to come up. Brian O'Neill just signed a massive extension. The tight end spot we'll see, but Donovan Jackson next year will be entering year 3 for him. So Justin Jefferson, we've talked about. There's just, the running back spot is probably going to be a conversation moving forward. So I was just looking at the numbers too, and you got Alec Pierce just signed his deal. It's $60 million fully guaranteed. It's 28.5 an average annual value. That's sizable stuff. So my opinion, Collar, and we've got edge rusher depth on the side of the screen. I just still strongly believe they need to add somebody behind Dallas Turner in a pass rush centric role. Someone who has produced, someone who has done it, someone who is going to cost not a ton, but is going to cost something because they've proven it at the NFL level. Just because for me, even though this defense sounds very committed to playing team football this entire season, and certain guys are going to take turns, I just my mind is down the road of, if you lose an Andrew Van Ginkel, or if you lose a Blake Cashman, or if you lose a Dallas Turner, how much pressure can you really apply on the edge? So I still very much believe that this team needs to add a free agent edge rusher. Is that hot enough of a take for you, Keller?
It is, but let me redirect to Garrett on this one. You probably watched some Leonard Floyd, some Hassan Reddick. Do you have any other names of cut candidates or something like that you think would be a good fit for the Vikings?
Yeah, at this point, Hassan Reddick would probably be the guy where it's just like, hey, we just want you in one specific role. Don't overthink it. This is what you are going to do. We don't need you to learn the intricacies of Brian Flores' system. You see the guy that's getting snapped the football, 3rd and 8, just you need to run directly at him. That is going to be the complexity of that player's role. And I do want to add just one thing onto the Jordan Addison contract. What would be good for the Vikings, just if this were to play out, if everything plays out the way that we're anticipating this year, with improved quarterback play, with everything, then there's a conversation of what Kyler Murray's contract would look like in addition to the Jordan Addison. So there's also another layer of that. So whenever you look at this, it's never just one thing. There's 7 or 8 different things that could play into this. So I did want to also, I had that thought as the conversation was being had, where we may have a 9-figure contract for a quarterback before Jordan Addison's slice of the pie and his opportunity would even come up. So I wouldn't be surprised if this, due in large part to all of this, would be his final year in the Twin Cities.
Collar, edge rusher, you feel like they got to add one?
Yeah, I might lean a little Leonard Floyd just because he has experience with Kevin O'Connell with the Rams, and there's some other connections there. I think Ryan Nielsen in Atlanta last year. Am I thinking of that correctly?
Not last year, but he's been there certainly.
Maybe there's a connection there to Ryan Nielsen. Anyway, the point just being that Reddick and Floyd are kind of very, very similar outside linebacker type players. I agree that someone has to be added. I like where some of their players are, Ty Ingram Dawkins, Tyler Batty, Bo Richter. But if Dallas Turner goes out, you need someone to rush the passer. You can't really just sort of cobble that together. I think you could try to cobble the other role, but not that one.
Yeah. All right. Well, as we will always do on the Vikings Collective show, we're going to end with a specific tweet. So we'll read a tweet. We'll react a little bit to it. There's no rules on this. There's no stipulations. It doesn't have to be Vikings oriented. Maybe it should be, but I'm at least saying it's not going to be right now. Coller, we'll start with you. What is the tweet that you want to read this morning?
All right. So this is a retweet from me. So not one of my tweets, but a retweet of Josh Hermsmeyer tweeted out a chart where it showed the percentage of starters who have played in the last 15 years, like the amount of just percentage like of starters in the preseason. And you're not going to be shocked that it's just straight down. From 2010, the percentage of starters who appeared in preseason games, 2010 was around 33%. See, I got a chart. And recently it's as low as 9%. So as the preseason begins, this has become much more of a UFL game, almost like a tryout for younger players to just show something, kind of like Elijah Williams did last year for the Vikings. The guy's a beast in those preseason games, gets a chance, but it's essentially where we used to start in the second half with those young guys. You're basically starting in the first quarter with all of those young guys getting a chance. So as exciting as it is to come up on the preseason, it is probably the least you've ever seen in your entire life of the players who matter. And if you're going to a preseason game, folks, show up for warmups because that's all you're going to see Justin Jefferson.
I'm actually going to week 1 in New York. So I'm gonna need to bring my binoculars or something. This could be quite interesting. I'll give you the full.
Does have some budget to use these days, don't they?
Yeah, I believe that's the case. I'll give you guys the full rundown on the Vikings Collective afterwards. Garret, I think we made you go last time. That felt unfair. I'll go last this time. So what's your tweet of the week here?
Yeah, so there was this tweet sent out by Akron Football. They tweeted out this week, make history and be the lucky season ticket holder to design the opening drive. You can buy Akron season tickets for $75, and there's a chance that you can actually call a drive within a game. That tweet went mega viral, and I wonder how many actual season ticket holders Akron has now, simply because of the idea of potentially calling plays. There's a lot of Monday morning. They put in the stipulation down at the very bottom with the head coach, like they're consulting, of course, but there was a lot of like tweets or pictures of like the Colts where they had like the one against the Patriots where there were two guys right to the opposite. They're like, wait till I dial this up, wait till I dial 6 straight flea flickers, everything like that. And in an era of social media, I thought that was incredible. I am not an Akron season ticket holder, but I thought for to be able to buy season tickets for $75, that's quite the opportunity.
Yeah, look, you got to bring Akron Zips fans somehow. That's pretty good. And I'm glad. I don't know, the opportunity to call plays would terrify me. I was scrolling last night, and this was a tweet from a close friend of ours, Courtney Cronin. Coller, you've had her on your show for a long, long time, and it was a quote from Bears offensive coordinator Press Taylor on efficiency versus explosiveness in the run game. I thought it was really interesting. The quote was, I don't believe Ben Johnson has ever mentioned the word efficiency. We talk about explosive. We are trying to attack a defense. I think there's a perception of a lot of people. We're going to run the ball. We're going to stay efficient, control the clock. We are looking to attack the defense. We are looking to attack fronts, expose space, create run lanes, create explosive. And we don't look at the run game as a way to stay on track. We look at the run game as a way to attack defenses and really be explosive and continue to just put our foot on the gas the entire game. Wow. I mean, it was explains, I guess, a lot of how it feels when you're watching a Ben Johnson offense. But I don't know if I've ever heard somebody in the league talk about the run game like that. I don't know what you guys think of that. It would just kind of hit me like, whoa. There's a reason I'm optimistic about what the Bears have put together offensively right now.
I think that, sometimes they'll refer to the run game as sort of like eating your vegetables, like do the thing that you're supposed to do. I think that, Ben Johnson is the guy who orders the entire plate when it comes to he's got the salad and he's got the fruit bar and he's got everything if that's eating your vegetables. This guy loves the run game. Like Kevin O'Connell wants to succeed in the run game. Ben Johnson just wants to own the run game. And we saw that when he was in Detroit. We saw it last year. They had a lot of explosive plays. So that doesn't surprise me that is their mentality. And I feel like when you play against the Bears, you really feel it. And I'm thinking that Philly game, Philly was a great run defense. They ran over them in that last year, which sort of tells you there's a different level of commitment to it from that team and from that coach than for a lot of coaches around the league.
Garrett, what did you think of that quote?
Yeah, I'm a big Ben Johnson guy. He fires me up, and seeing the clips of him after the game, like seeing the clip of him after the Packers playoff win, screaming F the Packers, I effing hate those guys. I mean, he gets me ready to run through a brick wall. So it's like, I can only imagine like playing for him with that intensity that you see on a day-to-day basis. He is like everything I would want in an NFL head coach, just from an intensity, from how objective, just from how he goes about his business. I love it. I think that's very Ben Johnson as much as it possibly could be. Full compliment, by the way.
All right, and that's the most optimistic we will ever be about the Bears here on the Vikings Collective. On the Vikings Collective. This was a fun show. Really enjoyed it, guys. A lot of conversation, and it'll be interesting come next week when we speak where the quarterback situation ultimately goes. Thank you to Prize Picks, where you can play for $5 and get $150. That'll do it for this iteration of the Vikings Collective. For Matthew Coller of the Purple Insider, for Garret Greenlee of Football Analysis, I am Alec Lewis of The Athletic, and we will see you guys next week.